This particular episode is falling in the middle of a series that we're doing, but we have a couple of things related to current events that we just kind of wanted to discuss as well. And so there's a continuation of our Red Letter series at the end of this episode, which is going to put it out of order with the rest of the episodes. Just acknowledge the interruption, I suppose, and we'll be back to our in order exploration of the red letters after this episode. Thank you. I will let you take a lead in on the Middle East stuff, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so, there's been a bit of a kerfuffle. A little bit. let me try that again.
I mean, part of me, I laughed, and I was trying hard not to make a sound in case that actually needed to be the opening. But I some good use for the word kerfuffle.
Yeah, so there's been a bit of a kerfuffle over in the Middle East as of. Has it been 2 weeks now?
I think so. It's been, I don't know if it's been a full 2 weeks, but it's pretty close, if not.
Yeah, and I feel like there's an interesting dynamic with how the United States approaches this type of situation with basically every other country, but then when it comes to Israel, we have a very different approach, I think.
So this has a potential to be very interesting from the dynamic of your chosen ideologies and viewpoints and how that influences interpretation of events. And the fact that for the vast majority of Americans, I would say there's no true understanding of the conflict or its roots or its history or anything else. And I'm not going to pretend I understand it either. I probably know more than the average American, but that doesn't say a whole lot. But there are a lot of statements that I see that are very much in line with knee-jerk reaction to standing with a group based on immediate present-day interpretation of events without context.
Yeah. So when Russia invaded Ukraine, the United States was a supporter of the Ukraine. Most of the Western world was a supporter of the Ukraine for various reasons, and that support lent itself in a certain way. And then when Hamas attacked Israel, the U.S. has pledged its unwavering support for Israel and has backed it up with military aid. And it's interesting. It's interesting how we treat. I don't know. I feel like the United States treats them a bit differently. However, I would like to say this pretty straightforward. It doesn't matter. I don't think it matters what you believe, as long as you believe that the killing of innocent people, regardless of what their ethnic background is, what their heritage is, what their culture is, which lines, which imaginary lines they live in, it's wrong and it's bad. It's very, very bad. So whether it's Palestinians being killed or Israelis being killed, innocent civilians being killed, is reprehensible.
Unequivocally so, yes. One of the things I kind of want to bring back to the forefront, and that I think is kind of what you were getting at, I just want to make sure I interpret it appropriately. There's a difference, or an interesting difference in the dynamic between supporting a official ally and supporting an ally in spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
So I'll also say that I'm not. I couldn't. You know, I couldn't. I couldn't say a lot about the region and the not even the nuanced issues that these countries are having, but it's. I think the I think the United States is, or let me rephrase. I see people responding with absolute support for Israel. And I can't say, so if you say I support Israeli people, yeah. And I hope you understand that you should also support Palestinian people for the same reasons. But I don't know that the Israeli government is that much better than Hamas. The you know, it's the Israeli government has been funding Hamas and treating the Palestinian people with complete what's the word?
I mean, disregard for well-being
disregard.
would probably be the way I would put
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I remember, like, the difficulty of the Palestinian people to be able to just collect water, which is essential for life, over the past several decades has been made difficult by the Israelis. They have, they regularly cut off their water supply, make it difficult, make it, basically backing them into a corner. And I can't say that I agree with what Hamas has done, but it's kind of not surprising. It's like, if you if you mistreat somebody bad enough, long enough, they will lash out. I know that's putting it's putting a military attack on innocent civilians. I know that sort of. I don't mean to trivialize a military attack on innocent civilians.
I didn't get that impression. I just want to kind of emphasize one of the things that people like to gloss over. Yes, the initial attack was coordinated and performed by Hamas into Israel, and Israel has retaliated with similar disregard for civilian casualties. And that's the piece that you're really kind of wanting to focus a little bit more on, because if you go back to any altercation that we have been in as a country, it's been very similarly judged that we have to avoid, to the extent possible, collateral damage. It's the way it's referred to. I don't see, in fairness, I'm not right in the middle of any of this either. So there could be a effort to avoid collateral damage, but I don't get that impression. There's just not an effort to maximize collateral damage. It would be the way I would phrase it.
Yeah, I think right now the Biden administration is trying to ask, or they are asking Israel to tarry their ground invasion, basically to clear out civilians and to minimize that. But I've seen a lot of folks I know pledge support for Israel, and I guess that's kind of what's really bothered me. It's like, well, there's the difference between the Israeli people and the Palestinian people is not that much versus the Israeli people and their government and the Palestinian people and their government, or Hamas. So I find that interesting. But I also find it interesting that folks I know will automatically, I've seen automatically, make statements like, I stand with Israel. But I'm like, why? Why they are, well, first of all, they are not, they are by no means an underdog. They are the Goliath of this David and Goliath battle, where in Palestine is the David, ironically. And I guess the undertones of, knowing certain people, um, and things that they've said, I feel like the undertones are the belief that at one point in time, the Israelites, not Israelis, but the Israelites were God's chosen people, and they can do no wrong. And I find that to be really ignorant.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have a better way to phrase that other than maybe there's a mistaken or some level of misconception about what Israel is. From a, I'm trying to think of a way to explain what I have in my head that I don't really have a good way to verbalize. It's along the same lines. It would be based on the people that I know who would make similar blanket statements. It would be this equivalency in their head between Israel and Jerusalem and Christ. Whether it's, regardless of the relationship, it's just those are the things that are in their head somewhat synonymous in some way. And that drives this allegiance to or support for Israel in a way that I'm not even sure they recognize.
Yeah.
And I also don't get it. Like I mean we've had plenty of conversations in general over the past few years. I 100% support Ukraine. It's very clear in that altercation what the stakes are, what
Yes.
the lines that have been drawn, which side of autocracy versus democracy you choose to align with pretty much picks the side for you. Like, all of that makes sense. When you look at the Middle East as a whole, and not even boiling it down to just the intricacies of the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts that have spanned quite some time, but the Middle East as a whole has a lot of relationship politics that I don't understand. That I wouldn't begin to, without really diving into researching the different regions and governments and peoples as a whole, even start to try to claim any level of understanding of the conflicts that go on throughout the region over time. And then you add in this layer of the Israeli-Palestinian, and I think I like that verbiage better, the Israeli-Palestinian differences over however many decades, and recognize that the differences between the people are one thing, the differences between the leaders of the people are another thing, but there are strong opposition differences to that leadership and leadership within those areas too. Like, there's the extra level of a dynamic there that would be a lot like, to me, saying you had the United States divided into geopolitical regions with independent militaries for those regions along political ideologies, which, saying it out loud, we may not necessarily be that far from that being some level of true. But both of those political ideologies controlling significant portions of decision making in some way, either through opposition or through leadership, depending on the majority. Which the only thing that we're missing out of that analogy is the armed forces that are divided along ideological lines as well. But does that make sense? Like, there's a whole different nuance there that I don't pretend to understand. And I certainly don't look at Israel and say, I 100% agree with you and stand with you like I would Ukraine, because it's not an ideological fight in this particular regard.
Right. This is there. I mean, if you want to talk about in modern times, there are some deep seated belief between two different groups of people that have been in opposition with each other for millennia, where they believe that they have rightful ownership of the same very small strip of land. And, these deep seated beliefs are religious in nature, and that makes it, that makes the fervor all the, all the greater. So, I mean, in modern times, we can look back to how the English, post World War II, how the English and the UN drew up the lines that split. They gave Israel a land, then they gave the West Bank area to the Palestinians and Gaza, which are within Israel. So, yeah, and I don't know. Maybe this might be where I'm missing some information, but I don't know if prior to 1948, I think it was 1948, 1949, if that was considered Palestine. I know that there are some places that will describe, those that don't recognize the state of Israel, they'll describe that the country of Jordan extends to the is it the Mediterranean Sea? Yeah, Mediterranean Sea. So, yeah, there's a mess there, and the problem is that the only solution is that the folks there are gonna have to coexist. I mean, it's even one of the most sacred locations to the Jewish religion is where the ancient temple was in Jerusalem, and right now there's a mosque that was built there. There's a mosque on the site that the temple used to be. So that does not make matters well.
Understatement of the year. And I don't remember enough about it. So obviously, I was younger when I remember hearing about a lot of the when I first learned more about the early tensions, early for my lifetime, tensions between Israel and Palestine, and how some places recognized Israel, some places recognized Palestine. There was a theoretical discussion about if it's not unanimously recognized, does it ever really exist? Trying to make it more of a philosophical discussion as far as when I was first learning about it or hearing about it. And the main thing that I ever remember being told, just in a way to frame an attempt to frame my perception and views on the two groups, Israel was never really described as anything more than where Jerusalem is within the context of these discussions. But Palestinian leadership was often referred to as a hostile government attempting to insert or take control of Jerusalem. And I think that narrative, especially knowing that it's driven from a place of fairly significant bias when you think about the United States evangelical circuit, for lack of better phrasing.
Mm-hmm.
But having first learned about any of the conflict there from that view made it difficult, as it does with any topic, to eventually later reconcile this focused belief on how you would ascribe a certain level of intent to each group and be able to remove that and say that's not actually accurate and try to understand a little more about the conflict. Which, again, I do not understand well enough to discuss the specifics of the conflict over time. It's more I'm at least aware of the fact that there are a lot of layers to both sides, and I don't think either side has a stronger case uh, than the other, because both are basing their case on extreme religious beliefs.
Yeah, I don't think you have to know anything to know that killing innocent civilians is bad.
Yeah, and that's why when you first made that statement, it's unequivocally yes,
Yeah,
correct.
you don't have to know anything to know that that's bad, and you don't have to know anything to know that um, this particular conflict isn't going to solve any problems. This has been happening for thousands of years, and if they can't agree to live together, it's going to continue to happen.
I don't think I really have anything else on.
I,
I had, I tried to at least spread and or inject enough to make it sound like it was a long enough segment, but I don't know that I can stretch it out any further.
there was a quote from the movie. I think it was from the movie Syriana with it's got Matt Damon and George Clooney. I don't remember which one of them said it, but I'm not even sure what the context, but like it just stuck with me, and it was, you know what the business community thinks of you? They think that 100 years ago you were living in tents out here in the desert, chopping each other's heads off, and that's what you'll be in another 100 years. So yes, on behalf of my firm, I accept your money. But I don't. I'm trying to remember exactly what but basically, the West is like going to, the West is going to be like, all right, you're out there doing your Yahoo business. You're just, squabbling over these little issues, and you could be doing something better in the world, but you're just going to keep squabbling. Amounted to like you're just living in tents and chopping each other's heads off.
It's funny. I wonder how many people actually don't realize. How would you phrase it? Like looking at the style of architecture because of the materials they have to work with and everything else. Like I wonder how many people have a very antiquated view of what their actual capabilities are. Just
Yeah,
because it's different, you know?
yeah. Well, it's there. It's like you got to look at. I don't think it's not a pretty. I think it's a relatively beautiful place. I think when you go over there and you see things and you see the palm trees and it's like this is. I mean, there is a desert out there. It is an arid land, but it's not. It's not like the Sahara. I know large parts of the Arabian Peninsula are similar to the Sahara. It is a big desert, but I mean, look at Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Those cities are just, I mean, they are next level. I mean, the Emirates they ran out of oil. I don't know, something like not that long ago, or they're running out of oil. They knew that they were going to run out of oil, in the 80s and 90s. They knew that they were going to run out of oil, and they took their oil money and made it a tourist attraction. And like the majority, I think the majority of their income comes from tourism because they knew that they were going to run out of oil. And it's like some of the coolest looking cities and some of the coolest architecture in the world is over there. So it's not like it's not like that this part of the world couldn't be an amazing place to visit. We could throw this into this last section about not worrying. I mean, that might actually really fit with what we were just talking about. I don't know if we could have like a little. Hey, this we have a series going on. The series will continue, but we just wanted to talk about this because it is a current event in the world, and the majority of the episode be about that. Does
We
that
could
make
do
sense?
that. Yeah, we could do
Okay.
that. And then wrap up this last little bit with the end of Matthew.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fitting. It's fit. It's. I think the idea of not worrying is fitting, considering the things that are going on in the world, and I think that I don't know if I have the same take on worry as this bit, but I do think it is a good idea to not worry because you really can't do anything about anything. Most of the things that people worry about were never in their control to begin with, and will never be in their control.
So I want to come back to that statement. I want to. There are a lot of fun things about that. That's the reason I want to come back to it.
Yeah.
But one thing that I do want to mention, just thinking about this section as a whole, I think regardless of whether your take is it's more toward the literal faith side of it or not, it's still the same take. It's place your faith in something and don't worry about the details. So if your faith is religious in nature, then that's obviously where you're placing your faith. But kind of where I was going with it is the way I interpret this is I'm going to use the nature example again, like I mentioned before. Nature has a way of finding balance, very similar to our body's capacity to find that point of homeostasis. There's an idea of balance in nature that it will always attempt to correct and achieve. And so if you trust in this concept of balance, then there's not a reason to worry about the kind of ebbs and flows off balance. You especially if your guiding principle there is you're going to trust in this concept of balance. But you put any other word there you want, and you can still make it fit. If you want to make it more self-centered and say that you just trust in your ability to survive, this still doesn't really read any different. Now, where I want to come back to, where I said there's a lot of fun stuff here, the illusion of control is in and of itself a very interesting thing. And we've talked about it a few times, I think, but so I don't necessarily want to go into a lot of detail. But what's interesting is that we tend to latch on to things that give us either the illusion of control or the illusion of the ability to control a situation, however realistic that might be. But at the same time, there are things that you could say we can do or engage in or pursue that afford some level of control over aspects of life. And part of why I say all of this is interesting anyway is that it depends on whether you believe control in life can exist in the first place or if everything is out of your control.
I think most things are out of your control. I think you can be proactive about things. I think you can be prepared to react to certain things, better prepared maybe than not prepared at all. But ultimately, I don't think you have a lot of control over most things, other than yourself. I remember a friend of mine in high school, a friend's dad said that if you're ever in a car accident, it means that you were out of control. And like the natural, everyone I did this, and everyone I've said this to has reacted in this way. He's like, no, not if if it's the other person's fault. And I was like, but that's the exact definition of not being in control. You can't control that other person. And so some people were like, oh yeah, I get what you're saying. I follow. Because most people react with like, well, you could have perfectly good control of your car and it's not your fault and so forth. But it's like, yes, but you can't control any of the other cars out there.
You can abstract it a little bit though and make it an interesting debate. When we define the idea of perspective and what that means for reality, then reality is our perspective in general, kind of a overly simplified version. But by by taking that a step further, you can say that you can choose how to react to your perception or perceived reality, and therefore are in control of your reality, even if the events that unfolded were out of your control. Which is a fun way to take that. Always looking for the way to make it an interesting debate, but it's a fun way to take it out of the realm of, well, if this thing happened to me, I couldn't control it. But does that mean it was out of your control, or is your control still only limited to how you engage and react to what you perceive reality to be?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I've had a number of discussions surrounding those. Just to make my position clear, I do not believe we are ever in control. I believe we have a certain amount of control over how we react.
I agree.
And I do say a certain amount of control because I do not believe we can completely control how we react either. Just the nature of emotional response.
Yeah.
But I do believe just to clarify, I believe we have a certain amount of control over how we react, and we have a certain amount of control over how we prepare for the unexpected.
Yes.
And that's pretty much it.
I very much agree with that. Because I was just thinking, I was like, because I think people, I'll say for myself, I tend to have less control when I'm hangry, and it's like, oh, I could have prepared better ahead of time and made sure that I got some food before I got hangry. So I did want to say one thing about this passage, and it made me think of American Psycho, because it talks about just the way the way it sort of starts out. If you just kind of reading it lightly, it has a very feels very superficial. Hey, don't worry about your life. Don't worry about what you eat or drink. Don't worry about your body. Don't worry about what you're going to be wearing. And I'm just like, it just made me think of like the beginning of American Psycho, when there's this, significant focus on the details of clothing and the places that they eat and the foods that are being served, and like even down to the detail of like who's got a better business card. That just very superficial 80s, what was it? Materialism, and it made me think of this, or rather, this made me think of American.
I mean, I can certainly see the reasoning. I actually don't remember the last time I watched American Psycho. It is not fresh in my memory.
Oh man, it's a good watch. It's it holds up well. It holds up really well. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after-show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.